All right, so if you're following the Indian market at all, you've got to be at least a little bit curious about Amber Enterprises India Limited. They're the name behind a lot of those AC units you see around. But it looks like they've got their sights set on way more than just keeping folks cool. So today we're going to take a deep dive into their world, see what's making them so hot right now, and what kind of potential hurdles they might run into along the way. Think of it like a crash course on this company that's kind of quietly turning into a powerhouse.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Amber's kind of been flying under the radar for a lot of people, but their recent performance is definitely catching some attention. Their Q2 numbers for fiscal year 25 just came out, and we're talking 82% revenue growth. Plus, they've swung to a pretty healthy profit after actually reporting a loss this time last year.
Wow, okay, you've got my attention. 82% growth. What's the secret sauce here? What's driving those numbers?
Well, a big part of it is their expansion strategy. It's pretty aggressive. They're not just sticking with that core air conditioner business. They're branching out into other sectors. We're talking consumer durables, electronics manufacturing, even railway and defense systems.
So they're not content with just being the AC kings of India. Sounds like they're going for a much bigger slice of the
Oh,
pie.
absolutely. And they're not just talking about it, they're putting their money where their mouth is. Like with consumer durables, yeah, they're already a big player in the AC market, but they're not stopping there. Get ready for Amber washing machines. They're starting mass production soon.
Oh, interesting. Feels like a natural progression, hitting that same consumer base, but with a whole new product line. Now, what about electronics manufacturing? What are they up to there?
Big expansion of their EMS capacity, and a big bet on advanced electronics. They've actually partnered up with Korea Circuit in a joint venture to manufacture these high-tech printed circuit boards. You know, the kind that go in smartphones, wearables, all that cutting-edge tech.
So they're getting themselves in position to ride that global tech wave. Smart. But then there's this whole push into railway and defense. That's got to be a whole different ballgame.
It is. Bold move for sure. They're aiming to double their revenue in that segment within the next 3 years. Though what's interesting is they're not starting from scratch. Their order book's already looking pretty healthy, over 2,000 crores, so they've already locked in some significant contracts.
Okay, seeing a pattern here, Amber is all about aggressive growth, diversification. But let's be real for a second. This level of ambition, it's got to come with some risks, right? What are the potential downsides, the things investors should be thinking about?
You're right. No investment is risk-free, and honestly, one of the biggest things here is their debt level. All these expansion projects, they need a lot of capital, and that means taking on more debt. It's something to keep a close eye on, could affect their stability down the line.
Debt, yeah, definitely something for investors to watch. What other potential challenges are out there?
Well, they're going to be pretty dependent on regulatory approvals. Especially in railway and defense, those industries are heavily regulated, and any unexpected delays or changes, that could really throw a wrench in things.
Right, bureaucratic red tape, always a headache for businesses, especially in those sectors. And of course, can't forget about the market itself, always unpredictable. Even with the best plans, you've got economic downturns, shifts in demand, all that could impact Amber's projections.
Absolutely. All valid concerns, things potential investors need to factor in. But hey, before we get too deep into the risks, maybe we should take a closer look at what's actually driving their growth and what their management's been saying about their strategy.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to pick up next time. For now, I think it's safe to say Amber Enterprises is a company on the move, making some bold bets across multiple industries. But is it all sunshine and roses? Stay tuned, we'll unpack the details and see if their ambitions are actually built on solid ground.
You know, it's interesting when you look at the numbers behind these expansion plans. One thing that really jumps out is their current AC plant capacity utilization. Right now, they're running at about 40% on an annual basis.
Oh, so they've got a lot of room to ramp up production without having to build new factories right away, huh? It's pretty efficient.
Exactly. It shows they've been smart about their investments, and they're in a good position to meet that growing demand. And speaking of growing demand, they have also been pretty successful in attracting new customers. Like recently, they landed a new client for those larger AC units, the tower and cassette types. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, new customers, always a good sign. Are they doing anything to, strengthen relationships with existing clients too?
Definitely. Actually, the source mentioned they managed to upsell an existing customer. They went from just providing gas charging services to offering a full original design manufacturing solution. ODM, they call it.
Okay, now for those of us who aren't fluent in manufacturing lingo, What exactly does an ODM solution involve?
Basically, it means Amber handles the entire design and manufacturing process for a product based on the customer specs. So it's a much more comprehensive service, way more valuable than just providing one component.
So they're not just assembling parts, they're becoming a one-stop shop.
Mhm.
Smart way to boost revenue and really solidify those relationships.
Now, what about timelines? We know they've got these plans for washing machines, that new plant in Hauser. When can we expect those to be up and running?
While they're not wasting any time, mass production for those washing machines is set to start in the second half of this fiscal year. So very soon. And the new plant in Hauser, that should be operational by September next year.
Wow, that's moving fast. Okay, let's talk financials. We saw those stellar Q2 numbers, but what about the bigger picture, the outlook for the full fiscal year?
Their guidance predicts a consolidated revenue growth of around 25%, and they're expecting their ROCE, that's return on capital employed,
Mm.
to hit about 15% by the end of the year.
Okay, hold on, quick explainer here. For those of us who aren't financial wizards, what exactly is ROCE and why is it so important? Sure. So ROCE basically measures how effectively a company is using its capital to generate profits. The higher the ROCE, the better they are at turning investments into earnings. So that projected 15% for Amber, it suggests they're on track for healthy profitability.
Okay, that's a good sign. But to really understand their long-term prospects, we got to look beyond just this fiscal year. What kind of growth are they projecting further out?
They've set some pretty ambitious targets. In that railway and defense segment, remember, they're aiming to double revenue in the next 3 years. And for their consumer durable segment overall, they expect it to grow 3 to 3.5 times in the next 5 years.
Wow, okay, big goals. Clearly, they've got a lot of confidence in their strategy. What are some of the key things they're banking on to achieve all this?
Well, that joint venture with Korea Circuit is a big piece of the puzzle. It's how they're getting into that high-growth world of advanced printed circuit boards, PCBs they're called. HDI PCBs, flexible PCBs, even semiconductor substrates.
I think we might need to break some of those terms down. What exactly are those different types of PCBs, and why are they so important?
Right. So PCBs, basically, they're like the nervous system of modern electronics. They're the boards that connect all the components. So HDI PCBs, those are high-density interconnect PCBs. They pack a ton of circuitry into a tiny space, essential for things like smartphones and wearables. Then you've got flexible PCBs. They can bend and twist, which is crucial for things like foldable phones and curved displays. And semiconductor substrates, those are the base materials that you build microchips on.
So Amber is not just assembling finished products anymore. They're getting into the real nuts and bolts of advanced electronics manufacturing. This is a much more complex, sophisticated play.
It is. They're moving up that value chain, positioning themselves to be a key player in that global electronics supply chain. And their investment in that new plant in Hoser, that's a big step in that direction. It's being built in 2 phases. And once it's done, it'll add a massive 840,000 square meters of manufacturing space.
That's huge. Really shows the scale of their ambition. But with all this expansion, diversification, are they swimming in a sea of opportunity? Or are they facing some serious competition? What's the market landscape looking like in these industries they're going after?
Well, just to give you an idea, the AC industry in India, that's projected to grow 25% to 30% this year alone. And that bare board PCB market we talked about, that's estimated to hit nearly 80,000 crore rupees by fiscal year 2030. That's a compound annual growth rate of 11% to 12%. So yeah, the demand is definitely there.
So Amber's diving into markets with a lot of potential. But I'm guessing there are some established players in these spaces already. What are analysts and investors saying about Amber's ability to, compete and carve out their share of the market? I mean, it sounds like they're stepping into some pretty crowded spaces. Are they generating any buzz among the folks who follow these industries?
Wow. Yeah, definitely generating buzz, though I'd say it comes with a good dose of, cautious optimism. Analysts and investors, they're intrigued by that growth strategy, and the recent performance is hard to ignore. But they're also, they're digging a little deeper, asking some tough questions.
Like what? What kind of concerns are they raising?
Well, they're looking at things like gross margins, to get a sense of how profitable those products really are. They're also interested in how much inventory Amber's got sitting in their channels, which can be a sign of potential slowdowns in sales. And of course, they want more details on future capital expenditure plans, how they're going to manage that debt as they keep expanding.
Well, good points. I mean, it's one thing to have big ambitions, but investors want to see that it's backed up by solid planning, with a realistic view of the challenges, right? So What's Amber's management saying in response to all this? Are they addressing these concerns?
Yeah, they've been pretty upfront about it, actually. In recent calls and presentations, they've been giving pretty detailed, transparent answers. They're talking about operational efficiency, profitability, strong cash flow to manage that debt. They've even outlined plans for managing inventory levels, making sure those capital expenditures are in line with their overall strategy.
Transparency, always a good sign.
Yeah.
Shows they're willing to have that open dialogue with investors. But what about beyond the numbers? Those regulatory hurdles we talked about, those can be real roadblocks,
Mhm.
especially in areas like railway and defense. Has Amber's management given any reassurance on that front?
They have, yeah. They point to their existing relationships with government agencies, their track record of getting those approvals, and they say they're being proactive about staying informed about any potential changes, making sure they're in compliance. So it sounds like they're not just hoping for the best, they're actively managing those risks.
Okay, that's good to hear. So, big picture time. Our listeners now absorbed a ton of info about Amber Enterprises. What's the key takeaway here?
I'd say Amer's a company that's really charting a new course. They're not satisfied with just, staying on top in the AC market. They're going after growth in these new exciting sectors, and they're doing it with a combination of vision and action.
Definitely a company to watch. But as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one question our listeners should be thinking about as they keep following Amber's journey?
Well, they've made it clear they want to be a major player in these new markets, right? Consumer durables, beyond just ACs, advanced electronics manufacturing, even railway and defense. So the real question is, how do they stack up against the competition in each of those areas?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's one thing to have the ambition. It's another to actually go toe-to-toe with companies that are already established, who already have a foothold in those markets.
Exactly. So as you learn more about Amber, don't just focus on their own numbers and projections. Look at who else is out there. Who are the key players? What are their strengths and weaknesses? How does Amber compare? And maybe most importantly, what advantages does Amber have? What can they do to stand out, to grab that market share?
Excellent food for thought. Remember, knowledge is power, especially in the business world. So keep digging, keep asking those tough questions, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the companies and trends that are shaping the future.